But as early as 1980, George Lucas was tampering with his movies set in that famous old galaxy far, far away. And most would say, not always for the better. Now, everyone knows about the hand-shot first controversy and the CGI gumbo of Jedi rocks, but that's not all. There's also countless minor changes that have been made to the films that are so pointless you probably never even realized they've been made. So I'm Ewan McClunky from What Culture Star Wars, and here are the 10 most pointless Star Wars changes you never even noticed. Number 10. The Dug in Jabba's Palace. Return of the Jedi. By the time the 2011 Blu-ray release of the saga came around, pretty much everything tamperable had already been messed with, leading to some of the most pointless changes noteworthy only by their sheer ridiculousness. As has become tradition, it was Episode 6 that suffered the most alterations. By far the most notorious of these was the addition of Vader screaming "No" when he saves Luke, but there are others that are even weirder by sheer virtue of their nothingness. Just before Luke enters Jabba's palace, you can now see a CGI Dug, subbulbous species from the Phantom Menace, bounding through the background while all the other puppet characters sleep. The entire opening of Jedi had already had a lot of elements change, with some major design overhauls, the snouted Sarlacc being one, and while they were all questionable at best, at least the vague notion of well-meaning intent was there. With this case though, the computer-generated edition is so slight it's not even worth the effort. Number 9. The various Krayt Dragon screams. A New Hope. Obi-Wan tricking the Empire's unluckiest Stormtrooper? Vader choking an overzealous officer? No. The first ever use of the Force on screen was nothing so iconic. Instead, it's a power so nondescript that it's not really been used much since. Old Ben stumbling through a canyon, making a bizarre sound to scare off a bunch of Tusken Raiders. That isn't just some random scream Obi-Wan's making though. It's the call of a Krayt Dragon, one of the various nasty beasts that live out in the dunes of Tatooine. Because the original sound apparently wasn't up to scratch, it was updated for the 2004 DVD, bringing it more in line with the Krayt call heard in various video games released up until that point, an alteration that was noticed and enjoyed by precisely no one. But like so many cases of these changes, it doesn't end there. It was updated yet again for the Blu-ray release to sound like something you'd sample from a new metal track. Number 8. Vader landing on his Star Destroyer. The Empire Strikes Back. Luke's escaped his grasp and Lando's deserted Cloud City, sending the populace into panic while freeing Leia and Chewbacca. Naturally, Darth Vader's a bit peeved. He angrily storms out of the station's bowels and growls for his troops to bring his shuttle. The next time we see him, he's back in the Executor, ready to ensnare the damaged Millennium Falcon. It was clearly enough, but in 1997, Lucasfilm added in a pointless sequence detailing his Imperial shuttle flying from Bespin to his Star Destroyer. In amongst the thrilling rescue of Luke, it's a totally unnecessary scene, filling the audience in on something they already knew. What makes this addition particularly weird is that to achieve the Star Destroyer's hangar on a budget, previously deleted Death Star footage from Return of the Jedi was used, meaning the battle station's commander, Moff Jerjerrod, pops up in a continuity-busting cameo for no reason. Number 7. The Head Bang Clunk. A New Hope. It's one of the most well-known movie goofs ever, when the Stormtroopers burst into the hangar control room and discover R2-D2 and C-3PO hiding in a cupboard while the soldiers bangs his head on the automatic door. It's a once-seen, can't unsee moment, forever picked up on rewatch after rewatch. Once he realized the mistake had slipped through, or because it became so notorious it couldn't be ignored anymore, George Lucas tried to make it look purposeful. A dull thunk was added to the scene, turning one extra's minor slip-up into a barely signaled-in joke. Number 6. The New Wampa. The Empire Strikes Back. Wampas were actually intended to play a much bigger part in the Hoth set sequences of The Empire Strikes Back than they eventually wound up in the finished product. A whole subplot of Echo Base being plagued by these Yeti beasts, culminating in C-3PO using them to ward off snowtroopers, was cut, and due to a rather poor costume, the opening run-in with Luke was purposely shot to hide as much of the creature as possible. With the time and money to do things things properly in 1997, Lucas filmed some new shots of the Wampa feasting on Luke's tauntaun to broaden the scope of the escape scene. In a practical sense, this isn't that noticeable, although it did have a big impact on the saga. The version of the Wampa that fans typically think of is the redesigned version. And hey, in all honesty, this is one of the few special edition changes where you feel it genuinely was a case of realizing something impossible at the time, and it is more befittingly naturalistic to show the monster. The avoidance in the original version does feel rather stylized, but given that the sequence works in its earlier form, it is still somewhat unnecessary. Number 5. The Slave One chasing the Millennium Falcon. The Empire Strikes Back. The Empire Strikes Back is comparatively light on retroactive changes, although it's not without some pretty funky adjustments. A CGI shot of Slave One tailing the Millennium Falcon was added into the scene where Han evades the Imperials by hiding his piece of junk as garbage. It's a short moment, but that extra focus in a pretty slight scene greatly reduces the tension around the gang's presumed escape. Worse than that though, Boba's shown following so close behind the Falcon that it seems that Han's already got some preemptive hypernation blindness. Empire's Special Edition is full of elaborate CGI establishing shots, but at least the numerous flybys on Bespin were adding a sense of scale to Cloud City. This, on the other hand, merely tries to push Slave One's design to increase merchandise takings. Number 4. No more eyebrows for Sebastian Shaw. Return of the Jedi. Poor Sebastian Shaw. Not only is he trumped on Google by the Hellfire Club's X-Men villain, but his pivotal role in Episode 6 as the unmasked Darth Vader has been slowly weakened in the years since release. Most notable, and by far the most derided change to the original trilogy this side of Han and Greedo's Cantina showdown, is his replacement by Hayden Christensen as a Force Ghost. There's absolutely no point for this alteration beyond hyping Revenge of the Sith, which was due in cinemas less than a year after the change was made. Lucas's subsequent claim that Christensen was when Anakin was last good completely passes by Vader's last-minute redemption too. Oh well, at least Shaw still has the unmasking scene. Well, sort of. That too wasn't without its own share of digital alteration. In the original version, his big bushy eyebrows were proudly presented, but in the same update that brought with it the Christensen replacement, they were digitally shaved off because Lucas finally realized that if Anakin was burnt alive, he'd probably be totally bald. It's a fair enough adjustment, but so minor it's hardly worth it. Besides, couldn't his hair have grown back? Number 3. Random subtitles. Return of the Jedi. The various alien languages of Star Wars were originally little more than phonetically linked gibberish. In the years since the first film's release, however, the expanded universe turned them into fully fleshed out forms of speech that, while not quite Klingon-level complex, still need several Wikipedia pages just to cover the basics. These rules were then adopted into the movies through the prequels, but naturally some elements of the original movies didn't retroactively fit, so several changes were made. Most notably the changing of English text to the galaxy's Arabesh alphabet. Not all language alterations were quite so positive though. Take this doozy from Episode 6 for instance. Originally, the confrontation between Jabba and Leia, disguised as Boushh the bounty hunter, was conveyed entirely by C-3PO's translation, with the two key parties talking in incomprehensible Huttese and Ubese respectively. However, in the special edition, subtitles were added to the alien dialogue because space madness. Number 2. Oola in the Pit. Return of the Jedi. Like the Wampa, the special editions also reduced the impact of another iconic Star Wars monster, the Rancor. The original version is a masterclass of building expectation and suspense. The crab beast thing first alluded to when Oola, Jabba's unlucky slave, is thrown into a dark pit and goaded by the denizens above as she screams in reaction to an unseen threat. But it's not until Luke turns up a good 10 minutes later that we actually see what horror lurks down below. For the re-release, some clips of the Twi'lek slave girl in the pit, looking apprehensive as the Rancor comes out, were added. They don't go as far as to reveal the creature, but it does alleviate much of the mystery surrounding what exactly is below the throne room. And number 1. The many Phantom Menace editions. The original trilogy aren't the only Star Wars films that have suffered copious after-the-fact changes. Each one of the prequels was subject to alterations after their original release too. Revenge of the Sith saw Vader's "No" shortened in response to the fan backlash by the time it rocked up on DVD, and a few shots were reordered in Attack of the Clones for its VHS release too. But by far the most extensive are the alterations to Episode 1. It's been well covered that the Yoda Yoda puppet was made CGI to better fit in with episodes 2 and 3 in the Blu-ray, built from a VFX test for Revenge of the Sith, but that's just the latest in a long line of adjustments that have plagued episode 1 since its very first release. Most notably, the extended introduction and second lap of the pod race and the Coruscant taxi sequence were both added for the DVD version, dragging out random scenes to better show off the special effects. They don't have a massive impact on the film as a whole, they only extended the film by a couple of minutes, but it's worth being aware this is still weird after the fact tampering. And those were the 10 most pointless changes made to the Star Wars movies you never even noticed. Are there any other smaller ones we missed? Let us know in the comments below, and hey, while you're down there, it would be amazing if you could drop this video a like and subscribe to What Culture Star Wars so you don't miss another upload going forward. That's all for now though, take care, and may the Force be with you.